Hey, this is Annabelle and Sarah back again, and we thought we had another topic that we would pop in this week, and that is around an idea that has been around for a long time. I know I've heard it in a number of places, but it sort of really came to the foreground when I noticed it on the Cosmic Agency YouTube channel, which had quite a decent description of this idea that there are humans in the world, in fact the majority of humans, that are supposedly soulless or without spirit. They are part of the 3D program. Now, that's what we thought we'd talk about today. It's a tricky one. It's a way out there kind of idea, but it's something to really... we're just going to contemplate it a little bit and look at some of the other sources of information that we've picked up on as to, different viewpoints of this same idea. So, first of all, with Cosmic Agency's one, that was quite a detailed description, as I said. She goes into, and it's not black and white either. So if you, for example, walk down the street and you're surrounded by people in the middle of a city, how many of them are souls like you that truly are feeling and conscious and aware? You can't really tell while you're walking down the street. Most of them won't even make eye contact with you. So it's hard to tell. But if you picked on one of them and started to talk to them every day and give them your conscious awareness every day, you actually add some soul into them according to the Cosmic Agency stuff. So they become more real. And just like if you picked up a wild cat or dog and you made it your pet and you started to give it more and more and more attention, it becomes more. It seems to have more sort of human characteristics as it becomes more domesticated, and it's a similar kind of idea. It's kind of weird to talk about humans being domesticated, but it's just a bit of an example. Sarah, have you got any ideas that you had picked up on this idea of soulless characters?
Yeah, it's something that I bumped into a long time ago and kind of went, I'm not sure I want to go there, because that's just really weird to think that, are there people in my life that I know that don't have souls?
Yeah.
But some people call it spiritless humans, non-souled people, or they picked up a phrase from gaming, which is non-player character, NPC. Yeah. I've heard of several other too, like non-spirit, non-sourced characters, like NSP, no source energy, no soul coming in. At first I was like, I don't want that to be true. It's looking at your cognitive dissonance wall. If this was true, what would it mean? And I was just like, oh, God, it means we're really in the Matrix. If they can just make fake people like Mr. Smiths or whatever.
Like Rent-A-Crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
The extras in the background of the film. Like you're the character in the film and you've got all these people around you, but they're non-player characters.
Yeah. Really bizarre, but I have to admit I have had some experience with it working with clients. Once a few years ago, a client was asking me about her sister-in-law, who she was just like, I don't get her. She doesn't seem to have any empathy, any connection. She's like just walking around kind of hollow feeling. So I went and looked at her energetically, and I was like, okay, so who is she? I get her personality. Is this who she is? I made sure I had the right person. Is this what she's like? Yeah. I said, well, let's see what her soul is. And, maybe you guys have a soul connection that's making it uncomfortable for you, whatever. And I was like, okay, what's her soul? What's the soul connection? What? And I couldn't find it. And it happened with a client recently as well, where it was actually her sibling. And she had said she'd had a between life hypnosis session years ago, and the sister was not on in her pre-life planning. So she was kind of surprised because she was a really big part of her life, a negative part. And I went and looked at her. I was like, oh, whoa. Once again, I picked up the personality. I said, wait a minute, there's no soul there. We were both like going, what? I mean, that's sort of like the fear that I had from looking at this in the first place was, what if I find out my child or my sister or whatever is a non-soul player or a non-player character or whatever you want to call it. It's a hard one. I looked a lot at pre-birth planning with people and the early years of infancy and what the soul does while the baby is still in utero. And the soul part or the spirit part isn't in the baby most of the time when it's in utero. It was something that I just wanted to research a lot. It was so fascinating.
I'd love to do a whole separate conversation on that, actually. I think there's a lot more that we can talk about with babies and in the womb. That's and all fun. The rest. Yeah.
So, but my point is that I can see that a body can live without a soul being in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is curious. I remember when I was doing all those interviews with Mirk Ridan, he just kind of touched on it at one point, talking about the split. That's right. We were talking about the split of the world between 3D and 5D, that there will be they can merge together for a certain amount of time. You can kind of go into 5D and then you come back to 3D and move around, but there will be a point where it will split, and the 5D people will no longer see the 3D people. The people left behind in 3D will no longer see the 5D. Now, and I said, well, what will happen to all the people in 3D? And Mirk Ridan was very quiet and says, they will pass of natural causes. I said, that's about as vague as it becomes. What's that mean? Like old age? What? Like it just didn't go any further and change the subject. Then when you look at Gauge's stuff, Cosmic Agency, her material is saying that the 3D part is literally just part of the matrix, part of the program. So I picture this kind of very much like the movie Tron. The latest movie Tron, I know there were two, one was much, much earlier. And in the latest one, there's a player, a human, who comes down to try and save his father, who's sucked into the computer game, which was his own invention. And he ends up being, put into these dreadful games where you could die, and a bit like Hunger Games, really disastrous kind of things, all surrounded by all these people within the program that seem to be very real. There are nice ones and there's not nice ones, and there's, old and young and fat and thin and all the rest, all like a whole world created within this game. And he's got to go in there and find his father. Can he rescue his father to come out? He also makes friends with one special program, a girl, and they get to like each other. And this is what I'm thinking, like the more that he gets to know her, the more they connect. And in the end, it is, spoiler alert again, they escape out of the game as the game is about to implode, and he escapes with this girl program back out into the real world, right? Real world, which according to Gauge's stuff is 5D. That is real. That's what most planets live on, 5D. And the game implodes with his father inside it, who chooses to stay. And in Gauge's stuff as well, she says that there are people who may go with the 3D world because they choose that experience. But of course, we're all connected anyway. So once that life is finished, then you will go back into the melting pot and off we go again. In whatever lesson you choose, whether you come back to the planet Earth or whether you go somewhere else or whether you go into the past and you need to learn something in the history of Earth, because it's not linear. You can inject yourself back into there. Oh my goodness, this is I'm throwing a lot of ideas at you, I'm afraid.
Crazy.
But it's coming back to this idea that lifting the player and his girlfriend program out as the game implodes, all those other people within the program, they're just programs. So when they disappear, we're not like we have to, oh my God, oh, they're gone. No, it was just non-player characters. They were just part of the program. It's not like they all died and suffered. They just weren't there anymore. The game stopped. Wow. And it's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah. So when they say there've been other spiritual teachers as well have said, when you look at the news and you see disasters and fighting and suffering and all the rest, it's possible that the vast majority of them are these non-player characters. Now, I don't know if I like that, because that kind of like, shall I just go, oh, well. There's just part of the program. I mean, that's not true. We already know that there'd be some of them that are in the experience for the suffering. They need to experience that for some reason. But I don't like the feeling of just cutting off like, nah, they're not like me. That's separation, There's Something doesn't feel right about that to me.
Boy, it's one of those fine lines, because you don't want to go, oh my God, all those lives, all those humans suffering. You don't want to get caught in the drama and have it suck you down, but you also don't want to be flippant and
cold-hearted,
superior too. It's like, oh, I can do whatever I want to them. They're not real anyway. It's like, oh, but most people who might be, especially anybody who might be watching this right now, you're very, very not unlikely to slip into being cold-hearted and uncaring.
No,
we know the audience, right?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about this? Have you ever had an experience where you thought, oh, there's nobody there. That's just an ego and a body or a personality and no soul? It's rather bizarre. Generally speaking, the people who are close in your life, generally family members and lovers and spouses and things like that, that won't be true for them. Non-soul players marry non-soul players. What do they got? Whatever.
Non-player characters.
Marry non-player characters.
And if this idea is that you can give attention to add more soul into something as well, that it's not black and white, I think that's a really interesting idea.
That makes a lot of sense, because there was a point when, I can't remember how I got to this, but there was this idea of there's a man that we call Jesus. That isn't what he called himself, but that is a soul. That soul exists. But there's also the Jesus that was created of the suffering guy up on the cross. And it has been worshipped and believed in, and so much life force energy flowed into it that it actually exists as a life. The created Jesus, but it's not the actual human or whatever, ascended master who had a physical incarnation 2,000 years ago. And I've seen this also in other places when I've been working with people to remove entities. There will be usually what happens is there's some level at which the person allows the entity to become attached to them. An example, like a really simple one, was working with somebody who had a badger entity in them. And there was, right? And I wasn't telling her what I was doing with her.
Slapping
I thought she would freak out. But it wasn't somebody who wasn't open to this stuff, but I'm like, okay. And the process that I use is I talk to the entity and I say, okay, so, what I get your job. You've done it a long time. What would you do if you didn't have this job? What I saw was in a Native American type experience, she was trying to protect her family or her village and wanted to take on the power of the badger, sort of like a soul totem animal, and ended up bringing that in. It kind of stuck. And if it shows up, it's ready to be released. But what was funny about that one was that at the moment when it released, I said, okay, you can go back to being a badger. She went, ah! Sat up on the massage table.
Your client.
Ah! What was that? What was that? It was an animal. It came out of me. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to tell her what we just did.
Holy cow. Did she not hear you while you were talking to the animal?
I wasn't.
It was just
I wasn't telling her what I was doing. No. I was just doing it. I thought she would just freak out and not be just go, no, I don't, whatever. It was beyond her. But after that, she was like, that really happened. That really happened. Oh my God.
Wow.
But the other instance I was thinking of was I found somebody who had like a real warrior type energy. And when I asked this energy, what were you before you were this? Which is one of the questions you asked the entity. It showed me like a sculpture of like Mars or something, kind of like a Greek war sculpture. And then what were you before that? And it went back and it ended up being a nature spirit that had been taken up, and then humans had put so much projection and life force into it. It became like this war god. And that had been the entity. But then when I said, you can go back to how you started, would you like to do that? Spirit. It goes, yeah, zoom, gone.
Oh, wow.
So the idea that you can, by putting that amazing spark of spirit, which is what makes us special, right? You can put it into things. You can put it into this body, and you can put it into
another entity.
Another body that didn't have one originally, or another something else. I just think it's really fascinating and
This
really
is the
weird.
power of the mind, though, the power of the creative mind, right? So it also means that if you've got, I remember there was a question one time from Q, which really got me thinking. Does Satan exist? It was something like that. And you can go yes or no. If you put enough energy into it, does it exist? And I was like, oh, because we are creative. We can create anything we want. So if you've got a whole bundle of people who go to a Satanist church and think and believe in Satan, does it become real? It probably becomes very real for them. Maybe they could even generate a 3D Satan. But does that make it real for me? Because I just can't relate to that. So does that mean it would never show up in my life? Or would they create it and then suddenly it's there in front of me? Or it's just like when you have thousands of people talking about UFOs as well. If they put all their effort into that, 3D UFOs, does that mean it's going to come through for all of us collectively? I don't know. You know, it's really interesting. And you think about the creative side of things when you look at a whole crowd of people and you get those few creative sparks in the schoolroom, right, in the school classroom. And those are the real ones. They have the power to create. And all the others are just like wallpaper, which is a horrible way to look at it. But maybe they are not. Maybe they are these non-player characters, NPC. Maybe. And so that's my question anyway. I don't have any conclusion on it. If somebody else creates it, like Jesus on the cross or a UFO or a Satan, does that come in for all of us? Or do we have enough creative power in us to be able to go, I'm not accepting that in my world. If you've got your own little Satan down there who's real and appears to eat people live and do scary stuff, is it possible for me to go, be gone, be gone?
Okay, so two things on that. One is that to remember we're co-creators. You know, you can say you create your reality. Well, we are co-creating our reality. So it's not me who created this whole reality. All of us who are actually sold created the reality, and the other sold players on the field who may not be human. So that's sort of remember that idea in there, that we're co-creators and we're doing it together. But one time I ran into a little demon entity in somebody, and it was just like, yeah, you don't realize what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to shred you to bits. And I was like, okay, cool. So who were you before you were this? I wasn't scared at all. And it was like, oh my God, roaring and threatening and like, doing it. You better suck sticks in hell. I don't know. It was like, and then finally it just said, I'm out of here.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, phew, that wasn't a whole lot of fun, but that's gone.
Yeah. And there was one of those that came through when I was ended up in hospital for the first time in my life last year, first time emergency. And then I was having all sorts of strange visions coming through. And there was one that came through that was like a really fierce red bald head, like meant to be, just like you're saying. I just kind of looked at it with like, oh, I'm just going to look at you with love. Look at you with love, look at you with love, look at you with love. And it was like this, and then he kind of went. Kind of like, I'm just trying to do my job here. And then it was gone. So, yeah, we must be able to, if love conquers all, that if these things have been, nasty things have been created through the minds, the co-created minds of humans or interference, that we are powerful enough to get them to move on. We are powerful enough to do that.
Yep. I've had experience, easy enough. Oh, and that also is true for the things we create within ourselves, the inner critic, for instance, you know, or your inner masculine or inner feminine. So many times, like when I first started working with my own inner critic, I was just like, wow, you've been doing a great job this whole time. Exactly what I created you to do. Thank you. You know, I don't need you anymore. Would you like to retire? I can send you anywhere you want to go. You want to go to somebody else and be their critic? Do you want to, give you a gold watch and a cabin on the beach somewhere in Tahiti? You know, you can have whatever you want. You can do. And I was like, oh, okay. bye, I'm out, It's a funny how you can play with this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So we have no conclusions to this topic. This is simply an exploration, and I think that stirring up the conversation means that it can continue on. That as we learn more or we pick up information from other sources, that'll help us to understand it better. To be able to look at a topic from multiple perspectives is the best way to understand it. Don't ever think, I trust that person, so I'll believe them and I'll look from their direction and that's it. That's the answer. It's no longer that case. If we want to look at things multidimensionally and move into 5D, it's going to be about learning to look at things from many angles and understanding that we never quite know enough about it. There's always more to learn. So, yeah, that's the end of this subject, really, isn't it?
Yep. So let us know. Have you had any experiences with this? What do you think? Is it real? Is it not real? We'd love to hear your side of the story, too.
Good fun. Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
See ya.
Bye.